Hey everyone, this is JT with the solution to my rotational symmetry puzzle. I hope you had fun trying to solve it, and as always, congratulations to the first person who was able to solve it and claim the prize. Alright, so the first thing we notice with this puzzle is that there are 16 larger squares in a 4x4 grid. At the very beginning of the puzzle, one will fill in with yellow, and then that pattern bounces around to each of the other 15 squares. So this is giving an ordering to each of these squares. And the first thing we can do is record that order. So here's number 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. Just start recording this, and once we go through all 16 of these, figure out the order, we get this grid on the left, so labeled 1 through 16 based on the order when the inside of that square filled up with yellow. Now, since the private key of an address contains 16 digits, it's not too much of a leap to associate these positions with digits in the private key. So that's what I did in this second part labeled private key digits. The very first one's is 0, then 1, then 2, then 3. And then the last one, of course, being an F, because private keys is 0 through 9, A through F, it's hexadecimal. So that's all I did there, converted this ordering into just digits of the private key. So now as this video continues to play, the next thing that happens is that these squares fill in with these patterns, and then the squares start to rotate either right or left by 90 degrees. It's always 90 degrees, but they rotate either right or left. If we watch the entire video, we'll see that there are a total of 64 rotations. So that's another key that's the main key that the solution to this is a private key, is that there are a total of 64 rotations. Now, if we go back to the very beginning when these patterns come in, there we go, pause it there. If we look at this for a while, we'll notice that, first thing is there's two types of patterns. The inner pattern with the inner 9 squares, colored green, yellow, and gray. The gray ones don't really matter for this inner pattern. And then the outer pattern that's in black and red. Well, for the inner pattern, notice that for each square, there's an associated square that has the same inner pattern, but with the yellow and green colors flipped. So we have upper left square, we have 3 yellow squares, 3 green squares. That is opposite to this other one that has, the colors are exactly switched. If we look at this Y shape here with 1 yellow square in the middle, and then 3 green squares on the outside, well, it's sort of associated to this square in the bottom right, where the yellow and green colors have been switched. So we can go through this every single square and figure out what it's associated with. And I just started by labeling this upper left square as A, and then same with its associated square based on the middle pattern. So there's 2 here labeled A. I do the same thing and move along to this one here, label it B, same with its associated square. And so that's how I made this grid here. Figure out all those, what I call the center associations. Next, we can do the same thing with the outer patterns. So this first one here is associated with this square because the red and black colors have switched. And you'll see that each one has an associated partner. And again, I made the same grid, but the associations are different for the outer patterns and the inner patterns. And that's important because depending on which way the squares rotate, we'll use the different pattern. So to solve this, you kind of had to make a choice. The actual solution is where if the square turns right, we're going to be looking at the inner associations or the center associations. And if it rotates left, we'll be using the outer associations. This one you'd have to probably try it both ways to get the answer. You might get lucky and the first way works, but you're going to probably have to try it twice to figure out the correct order. Alright, so how exactly do these work though? So if a square rotates right, we're looking at the inner or the center association. So for example, if this upper square turns right, we're looking at its associated square, which is this other one labeled A in the center associations grid. And then we're just looking at this position in the private key digits table, which is a 0. So that's square in the grid based on the initial ordering. So if this first upper left square were to rotate right, that would correspond to a 0 in the private key because it's associated to this square based on the center pattern and it rotated right. So based on this information, we can make a rotation key. And we see that I wrote a right rotation on this upper left square is corresponding to a 0. Now if that one were to rotate left, we'd have to use the outer pattern. So this A, well, the other A is here, and that position in the private key digits table is a B. So a left rotation there is going to be a B in the private key. So we can work through all of that and come up with this rotation key where for each square I'm associating a right rotation and a left rotation with a different digit. And now we just look at the order of these rotations and start it over from the beginning. So the first one that will rotate is right here. It rotates left 90 degrees, and if we play that again, notice that the two isolated red rectangles start in the upper right and they switch to the left. So there they are in the initial position. They go here. That is a 90-degree rotation to the left. So based on the associations in this key, that will correspond to an A in the private key. So this starts with an A. The second one to rotate will be this square here. This one rotates to the right 90 degrees, which corresponds to an E in the private key. I'll do two more. So the third one to rotate will be this square here, rotates right 90 degrees. That is an 8. And then, so immediately after that rotates, you have this square rotate. And if you saw that fast enough, you can look at the isolated yellow square in the corner. That shifts down, so that is a left rotation by 90 degrees. Some of these are a little bit tricky to figure out, but that turned left, and based on this key, that corresponds to a 3 in the private key. So if we go through the rest of this video, continuing in that fashion, using this key, we get the full 64-digit private key. And notice that it does start with AE83, which we just figured out. So congratulations again to the first person who was able to solve this, and good luck to everyone working on any of the puzzles that have yet to be solved.